am a project coordinator for the OIA. And yeah, we can begin shortly, I guess, if you want to move on to the first slide.
Sure, and I just wanted to start out by thanking you, Katie, officially and formally for being here. So I reached out to Katie to see if we can set up an information session. This agrology is something that I am still exploring myself and trying to help some students understand. So I thought this would be helpful information. We really appreciate your time today for being here. And by the way, to anybody that doesn't know me, my name is Carolina and I'm a career advisor in the Experiential Learning Hub. So my job is to help people navigate career planning and employment. And again, just a reminder about housekeeping issues, please stay muted, raise your hand or type in the chat if you have a question. I'll do my best to make sure that your questions get answered or that Katie recognizes that there are questions when I can. And encourage you just to turn your cameras on if you don't mind. That really helps us as presenters to feel like we're actually talking to human beings. So just if you can be so brave, that would be much appreciated. And I will turn it over to Katie now. Thank you again, Katie.
Perfect. Thank you. Yeah, so I guess we'll just I'll go through the beginning a little quickly so that way we have more time if there's any questions. So one of the first things I'm going to start out with is agronomy versus agrology. There's a lot of times that people will think they're interchangeable or they just don't quite grasp the difference. Then I'll do a quick overview of our organization. I have some examples of what agrologists actually do out in the field. I will talk about the benefits of the other provincial organizations, our national organization, some of the benefits of joining the process, and then how to actually join if you're interested. Next slide, please. So agronomy is the science of utilizing plants, animals, and soils for food, fuel, feed, fiber, and more. And so it is a lot of plant genetics, plant physiology, animal sciences, soil sciences. Agrology is a lot less well-defined, I will say, and it's considered the science and art of agriculture. So they've been using the term agrology in Canada since kind of the middle part of last century. I want to say it was the late 50s that it started gaining a lot of prominence. And so it encompasses a lot more in that, so that instead of it being just working directly with like plants, animals, and soil, for example, agrology takes in communications, people who work in the government in various capacities. So you could be a bureaucrat that works in agrology as a member. Next slide, please. And so we are a professional organization that connects professionals across agricultural, agri-food, and environmental sectors. And we have several different scopes of practice that you can choose as your main scope. So you do have to specialize in one of them, and your application would have to be tailored to that. That you can't, for example, go through for soil sciences, but then also be a professional ag advising people on agribusiness. That if your specialization is dealing with one thing, you're not allowed to go out of that scope of practice. But so you can do animal science, soil science, agri-food and nutrition, plant science, agriculture, environment and ecology, agricultural engineering, agribusiness, communications, economics, finance, and services. And so the one at the bottom really differentiates it from agronomy, in that you could have people in communications, you can have financial advisors, people that do agri-lending, that sort of agriculture, but not direct plant and soil and animal sciences. Next slide, please. So if you have a 2-year degree, your title would end up being a technical agrologist, which is the TAG acronym. And if you have at least a 4-year degree, then you can be a professional agronomist or agrologist. And the only difference is whether you have a 2-year or 4-year education. Everything else you get is the exact same in our organization. And by able to show that acronym on business cards, on your resume. It indicates that you have education and that you have credibility, that you belong to an organization. And so if you do misrepresent yourself, for example, you won't be able to use that. We'll take it away from you. And so you have professional development and continuous education as part of being a member. And it really does. We have a code of ethics. You have to take a professionalism and ethics course before you can become a professional agrologist. And we do have a high standard of conduct for our members. We'll get into a little while later that there are a lot of labor mobility and employment opportunities across Canada once you have once you join our organization as either a professional or technical agrologist. And then, as always, most professional organizations, there's networking, there's some personal benefits that you guys have access to as well. Next slide, please. And so just to kind of point out again, as a professional organization, we're on par with like accountants, foresters, and so there's something called the right to practice and the right to title. So a right to practice is something where you must be a member of that organization to practice that in the province. So you have to be in the medical profession, like to be a doctor, you have to be in their organization in good standing. Whereas, for example, that I always like to use with Agrology is more along the lines of a human resources professional or ECE, early childhood education, where it's a great benefit to have that. And there's certain jobs where you need to have that. But for example, you could work in early childhood education and run a home daycare without needing to have the ECE designation. And you can work in human resources without being a chartered member of the human, like a resource professional, but you can't misrepresent yourself, that you can't say that you are a part of the professional organization for human resources when you're not. Next slide, please. So just a few examples for what agrologists actually do. I have a few slides highlighting some of our members. Andy Van Nykirk is actually our treasurer on our board. And so he went to the University of Guelph. He took the Advanced Agricultural Leadership Program. He works in the finance industry, and he's also a certified crop advisor. And so he is an agronomist and an agrologist. He manages his own research farm in Stayner, and he's involved in several organizations. Next slide. Donald Good is someone who does not practice agronomy, but is an active agrologist. He is a lawyer, and so he has been providing legal services to farmers, and he quite often has to give expert testimony. He very much works only in agriculture and only in his scope of practice. It's not anything related to agronomy, but he is able to interpret laws for if there's an issue with line fences or the sale of a farm that it ends up in court, anything like that. Next slide, please. Some of you may know Beth Davidson. She is currently on mat leave, but she's a sessional professor at the University of Guelph. And she works for Swine Health Ontario. And so she very much works in soil and animal sciences. But just, yeah, another kind of example that she works more on the education, research, and then animal health aspect of it. And then I have one more member profile that I would like to show you just to kind of give a large range of what all we can do. So Adolf immigrated to Canada in 1993, and he, by profession, is an engineer. He worked in the auto industry for several years, And then he decided to switch career paths, and he started an organic grain farm. So he, because of the engineering, is able to create and build like the machines he needs to press for his cold pressed oil, organic oat flakes and stuff like that. But he's managed to combine his previous life in engineering into agrology and working very much with organic grain. Like, it's a very niche thing that he does, but it's uses agrology, it uses engineering. So we do like everywhere from professors to lawyers to certified crop advisors and people working with organic material. We have a wide range of members as long as you fit into one of those scopes of practice. Next slide, please. So we do have provincial organizations. Every province has one. And I mentioned before about the right to title versus the right to practice. In Ontario, we just have the right to title. So we can't control who works in agrology, but we can control who's a member of our organization. And that makes it easier to transfer to other provinces. But Alberta, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, Quebec, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, and PEI all have a right to practice, which means that they can control who works as an agrologist in that province. And it is a requirement for you to do a lot of jobs. So by having it in Ontario, it opens up a lot of the jobs that you could be getting in other provinces, or jobs with national organizations that would require you to do agrology work in other provinces. So there's, for example, if you do environmental assessments, that very much fits into here. And we will have people that where they work, they do it in all three of the prairie provinces. And so once you are accepted by one province, it's really easy to either become a dual member with multiple provinces, or if you're moving, to transfer membership as well. And we find that the only ones that we can't transfer into Ontario easily is if you work in anything to do with oceans and fishing. That Ontario does not have that as one of our scopes of practice right now. Whereas if you work in BC, for example, they have a lot of people that work in seafood and fishing, or it's a big thing out there. But as long as it's a scope of practice that the other province recognizes, it's easy to transfer between them. And so a lot of people, if they're not sure where they're going to get a job or what they want to do, they will get this just in case. And because certain provinces only have, like, to apply for the right to title in Ontario is a lot less expensive than if you're trying to do it in Saskatchewan, is how I'll say it. That because you need to have it there to practice, they can charge more for it. And so a lot of people we find will, if they're just starting out their career and they're working in a few provinces, they'll apply to the cheaper one to go through and then transfer to everything once they are on their career path. The next slide, please. And so this is our national organization, Agrologists and Agronomes Canada. Agronomes is the French word for agrologist, but it also really does confuse people when we're trying to differentiate between agrology. So I get that that is confusing for people. And the main benefit of the national organization is to meet quarterly and make sure that all of the provinces are on the same page about requirements for labor mobility, transfers. If one of the prairie provinces has had a member that has had a complaint about them, they'll let the other provinces know in case he is a member of multiple provinces. And yeah, we don't do a whole lot nationally. It's mostly just to make sure that we're all on the same page about things, and to help anyone that we need. For example, you need a professionalism and ethics course. Most provinces used to do it in person. And so we communicated a lot to make sure that we're presenting similar content as we've switched to doing them virtually. So that way, if you do take the professionalism and ethics course in Ontario, it's the same content as what you'd be getting in BC or New Brunswick. Next slide, please. So in terms of benefits of joining, it's a really quick way to get your degree kind of verified and validated and to make your resume stand out. We offer a lot of networking opportunities. We have regional branches across the province, sorry. So there is a branch in Guelph. And for example, the branch in Guelph has several people connected to the university. It has several people connected to Ontario Soil and Crop, and it has some government members as well. And so if you were looking to get into one of those fields, this would be a really great way to make sure people in those areas actually can put a face to a name and things like that. We also offer a mentorship program. We currently have 5 people in that. It's not mandatory. It's very much self-directed. So we have someone who their goal is considering whether they need to advance in their current job or whether they're ready to start working on their own as a consultant. We have 2 people who are actively just looking to find jobs that closer align to where they want to be working. But so if you wanted to have a mentor, you definitely can. It's easy enough to organize, but it's not something we make people go through. We have lots of committees that people can get involved with too. And we found that since we are doing things virtual, we are getting really good attendance. When we do put on a virtual event, when we have branch meetings, we will have people do presentations on what they're currently doing for their work, and those are always well attended as well. We require that all members do at least 35 hours of continual learning every year. And so depending on where you work, some people that's very easy to fill. Because it's a requirement, we also try to promote as many learning opportunities we have, any sort of meetings. It has been a little difficult this year because there's people that used to go to the same 4-day conference every year, and that took up all of their hours, but then it went virtual this year and the whole conference was 4 hours instead. So we do understand that COVID's made it harder for people to meet that, but we always try to let people know as soon as there's any opportunity for that. As I've mentioned before, membership is transferable. It's recognized in other provinces. So if you're working for a company in Ontario where you don't need it, but you do in Alberta, it puts your resume ahead if you already have it, that they don't need to work to train someone to go through the process. And if you're working as a consultant, one of the most important things is that we can offer you through an insurance company access to errors and omissions insurance. And our members get a special deal on that. The people that we use also deal with the geoscientists and the engineering society. And so errors and omissions is just that if you're working as a consultant, say we'll go with a crop advisor, and say you go out to a farm and you tell someone what to spray on their field, and there's a minor mistake, but it ends up killing all of their crop, and they sue you for it. Errors and omissions insurance would cover that. That if you just had a decimal in the wrong place when you were giving your advice, yeah. And so one of the things is that as long as you're actively in our organization, errors and omissions insurance will work retroactively. So if something that you say today backfires in 10 years, you're still covered for it. Whereas a lot of different organizations, it's only for a brief period of time after a project's been completed. But again, not everybody is going to be a consultant. Our members work on a wide range, all different spectrums of agrology, but if you do end up being a consultant, it's a nice option to have. Next slide, please. So the membership process, most people complete it within 2 years. You can complete it a lot faster depending on where you are in your career when you get started. So all members have to complete the Articling Agrologist program first before moving on to the P or Professional Agrologist designation. And so our articling process requires you to complete the Professionalism and Ethics course that I've mentioned a few times. You have to do a 25-minute presentation that demonstrates how your profession relates to agrology. We used to do this at branch meetings, but now we're doing it online, and we're getting a really good turnout. It's fun to hear what everyone is working on. So we've had people that share academic research. We have someone who recently talked about how they work in more landscaping, but how they had to adjust how they do everything because of COVID. And he basically went through what they've changed and what ended up working well and what didn't work well for best practices. We've had people talk about food safety. And so it's just, you use that presentation to show how your specific job and why you would be a good agrologist. So if you're doing something like crop sciences, is very straightforward. If, for example, the previous slide that we went through, where it was a lawyer, he would really have to use that time to discuss how he's had cases that need his expertise in agrology and connecting agrology to his legal work. You need to have at least 2 years of employment in agrology with at least 1 year of continual employment in Ontario. And so if, for example, you just finished your master's degree and you have been working in a lab continuously for the entire length of your degree, you've already met that requirement and you just have to do the other ones. But this is the one that tends to take the longest to complete, that if we have someone who is new to Ontario and they join and it takes them a few months to find a job that they want, then they have to keep working until they get those either 1 or 2 years. And then again, we like our members to log about 35 hours of professional development annually. We do make you track that through our website, so we can do an audit just to make sure that you are typing in appropriate development, that you're not claiming that reading the Ontario Farmer every week counts for 2 hours or anything like that. But yeah, it's for most people, it's the Professionalism and Ethics course, the presentation, and then making sure they have their professional development and the employment. Next slide, please. And so before you join, you will need to have a current resume and a copy of your transcripts. That is something that I like to let people know before, because it's kind of frustrating if you get halfway through the process and then you need to wait for a couple days for your transcripts to show up or arrive or to find them. But once you have everything ready, you go to our website, which is oia.on.ca. And at the very top corner, it will say become a member. I've underlined it and circled it in red because sometimes people say that they can't find it right away. But yeah, it's very easy. You click that button and then next slide. Once you sign in, you can create your own username. You can also log in with Facebook or LinkedIn. Personally, if you are doing this, I would log in with LinkedIn if that's an option for you. It works pretty seamlessly into our system. and it's nicer to have them linked, I find, but you don't have to. But it's very easy. And so once you sign in, you'll say that you are applying as either a new applicant or to become an articling agrologist. And then you kind of sit in a queue until we have our next admissions committee meeting, in which case we go over all of the applications we have, as well as members that are going from articling agrology to professional agrology. And so there might be a bit of a delay from when you apply to when you hear from us. But yeah, once we have all of that loaded into the system, if you're approved, you'll get an email confirming your username, your password, and all of the criteria that you need. And it's very easy to get started. It's just that you do have to wait until we have that committee meeting. So I like to let people know that you can't apply on Monday and then call me on Tuesday asking why you haven't heard back yet. Okay, and then I think we have one slide left, but that might be it. All right, questions. And I've listed here our website, our Twitter, and our LinkedIn if you want to find us on any of that. I've put my email here just since I'm the one giving the presentation, but we have lots of email addresses that you can find. So if you end up just using info or admin or anything will work. This is the office phone, and as I'm working from home sometimes, I check voicemail frequently, but I like to let people know that you probably won't get an answer if you call me in the evening. Okay, and that's kind of everything I have for the presentation. I talk fast, and I talked a little bit faster because we started late, so please let me know if you have any questions. Anything that you want me to clarify?
Thank you, Katie. That was really, really great and very informative. I hope that we have some questions coming in. I just typed a message in the chat. So if you're comfortable, raise your hand and unmute yourself, or type your questions in the chat. I see we have some questions coming in, Katie.
So the first one that I see, the transcripts are required just to make sure that you actually graduated, that you need to have finished, and it helps us again make sure that you're applying to a scope of practice that you work in. But it doesn't, the transcript isn't the only thing. That, for example, for myself, I studied political science and I went to McMaster. I think I have 2 courses that touched on rural issues or agriculture. But it does show that I took a lot of Canadian politics and public policy classes, that you can tell I wanted to kind of work in government from the beginning. And then when you mix that with my resume, that shows that all through university, I worked for grain elevators or small farms, and then I've worked for the beef farmers. I've sat on various committees. So when you see the 2 documents together, it helps us get a better idea about your scope of practice. But yeah, no, there's not a grade requirement other than that you actually did graduate.
Can I ask my question?
Yes, please. Okay, can you state your name, please?
Saya?
Thank you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Katie, for the presentation. I don't think you were too fast, so this was good. So, my question is regarding the employment, length of year for employment. So, I just got approved, I think last month or probably the last batch for the articulating agrologist, and then I'm asking about the length of year for employment, as I've already completed a master's program in Canada, which involves some research and lab work, and I'm currently also doing my PhD. I've had like a year of that already, and then I got a year work experience in my country before coming to Canada. So does that count as the work experience required?
Yeah, lab work definitely counts. Because like there's lots of people that their careers are doing research or education. Yeah, so that like the main thing is that lab work should be at a graduate level to count, because that way it is continual. Whereas if you were doing it as an undergraduate, you probably aren't also working in the labs in the summer. It might switch depending on your courses, etc. So it's just that once you're at a higher level, we're confident that it's more time there. But yeah, no, that all definitely sounds like suitable work experience for us.
Okay, thank you. The other question that I was gonna ask you is regarding the professional development and ethics course. So how do we go about registering for that? Or yeah.
There's a few different ways. You can, if you've already been approved as a member, when you go onto your profile, there's an option for you to record it and log it all in there yourself. We find that other people, depending on if they have to track it for another job, they will just attach that. So you have the option that you can attach like a Word document or an Excel sheet if you have a way that you prefer to track it. Otherwise, it's just through your profile on our website, and people will update it as they finish.
Okay, for the course, I mean the professional course.
Yes.
The ethics course, right?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
No problem.
Katie, I just had a question about the tracking the professional development. Do you verify that they have actually completed these courses? Like, let's say they're submitting an Excel document. Is it just a list is acceptable, or do you verify or need some proof of completion certificates or something?
We audit a handful of them every year.
Okay.
So you never really know if it's going to be your year or not. And if there's something that seems really suspicious, we would look into it, I think. But for the most part, because a lot of it's annual events and people get into habits that, like, if you look at their track or their log sheet for the last 3 years or 4 years, it's really easy to see if it seems like there's a year that they made items up. But yeah, no, we will look into them. We don't look into everyone's all of the time. We have a bunch of people that, for example, have a podcast that they can listen to, and it counts because it's very educational for what they're doing. But it is out of my scope of practice, and I do not want to spend an hour listening to that podcast to make sure it's relevant for them.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else have any questions? I have a few that I would like to ask if there's time, but I want to make sure that there's opportunities for others to ask questions. Okay, we have one more that just came in. So for the professional development hours, does online free course count, such as relevant ones?
Yeah, they definitely do. There's so much stuff happening virtually right now, and so many different annual meetings, free courses, those definitely count. The University of Guelph does a lot of extension programs. So for example, if you do soil and crop type agrology, almost any of the webinars put on, like I think they just did a speaker series, and all of those would count. Yeah, you don't have to pay for the courses. You just need to track which ones you've done and show that they are relevant to what you're doing. So again, like, because I work more on the government, organizational, project management side, it wouldn't count for me if I start doing free courses on horticulture and pesticides because I want to get better at my garden. But if it's related to my job, if I started doing LinkedIn courses on how to better serve our members on LinkedIn, those would count. Does that make sense?
That's really great to know. I was actually just going to ask you about that, Katie, if because for all of those that are not aware, if you did LinkedIn Learning, so lynda.com is now called LinkedIn Learning. I'll just type the link in. For U of G students, you have free access to a variety of professional development courses and workshops and webinars. with your U of G single sign-on. So this is somewhere where you can look at professional development opportunities for free for you using your U of G single sign-on. We have some more comments coming in here. For students, can we count our normal coursework towards the hours, Katie?
Yeah, they would definitely count as professional development. We have some people that like it seems like every year they take an evening course and that's their development for that year. That it's normal coursework can count towards the professional development hours, but it doesn't count towards work experience, right? If that makes sense. We also do offer a student membership. So it's just $30 for the year, and you can kind of access all of our materials. You can attend meetings to see if you like it, but that's only available if you're a current student, and I assume that a lot of you are probably graduating if you're looking into career counseling and services.
I'm giggling because I think that's a common misconception, although a lot of students that we see are in their graduating year, but there's also a lot that are starting to creep in at earlier years that would definitely be interested in the student membership. So, and I just want to comment that one huge benefit I see of this, I still am wrapping my head around exactly what an agrologist is and all the, because there seems to be such a wide variety of people working in the field. But one of the giant benefits that we as career advisors really promote are to get out there, to network, to make connections. And this seems like, especially now that you mentioned, Katie, the student membership, I'm wondering if you can actually speak a little bit more to that, because networking and developing relationships is often a big way that people land jobs, right? And that it enhances their understanding of possible career paths and their connections with others that could ultimately help them get jobs. So I think that this joining, even as a student for now, for some of the people here today, would be such a huge benefit to help you better understand, again, as Katie said, is this a good fit for you? Make connections in your field and kind of put yourself on a path of something that really is relevant and important to you, and kind of put yourself in a niche career pathway, right? Like find your fit as you get to know the industry and get to know people. I don't know, Katie, if you wanted to say something else about that.
No, I that's exactly what our student membership is kind of for, is just to get people interested in it early and so they can check us out. Our application fee you can use for your taxes, like you can deduct it as a work expense. But we know that students' money's tight, and if you're just trying to take a look and see if it's something for you, yeah, so we offer that you can attend all of the meetings. You aren't allowed to vote or participate in any of our committees, but other than that, you're allowed to go behind the scenes on our website. You can attend any of the meetings. And I will say that for your location, it's kind of a split that you like. There's a Guelph branch. There is we call it Central, but it's basically the GTA. And then we have one for Niagara Hamilton. And so we find that if people want to work more in horticulture, fruits, vegetables, all of that, they will log on and become closer friends with Niagara Hamilton and the people there that are working at the research stations and stuff like that. Whereas like the Guelph branch, the current president is the head of the Alumni Association for the University of Guelph. We have 2 members there that teach at the university. The deputy minister of OMAFRA, John Kelly, is a member. So it really is, like, I mean, they're not all showing up to every meeting, but it's a great opportunity, I think, for people that are just starting out to make some really good connections, because we have people that have been involved in agrology for 40 or 50 years now. And I mean, the amount of connections they could make or referrals, it's just, there's definitely a wealth of knowledge out there, and we find that being able to connect people with them is so helpful. I can try all I want to post jobs and share them, but if somebody in the industry knows what job you're looking for, they will give you significantly better referrals and send more jobs your way than I would be able to.
I just typed in the chat, thank you, Katie, but I wanted to expand on what I typed in the chat because I think this is just such great advice. Like from my perspective, I see a lot of students that kind of feel they don't have a lot of control. There's a lot of uncertainty right now in this COVID world. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know, you know, who's going to be hiring next week versus not hiring sometimes. But so one thing we do have control over is trying to take advantage of more opportunities like this. Get out there, talk to people, join associations, take advantage of professional development opportunities, keep working on those connections and learning as much as you can. You can control that piece, and that could in fact lead to other opportunities as well down the road. So I just wanted to clarify what my chat message was all about. And we have a question, how do we get into the mentorship program?
I am just typing the response right now, but you just have, oh, and there's a typo in it, of course. You just have to send me an email at katie@oia.on.ca, and I send a little, I call it a pre-form. It's basically asking what you would like out of the mentorship program, what you think your goals would be, and then I try to find a mentor to match with those goals. So if you're looking more into networking, I'll make sure you're with a very outgoing person in your industry. Whereas if you're looking to know whether you want to do this specific field or another area, you're trying to figure out like where to focus for your 4th year, then I would put you in touch with someone who's changed careers and worked in a bunch of different industries and can kind of let you know how those two would compare. But yeah, so once you fill out that form, we try to make sure we can find the best mentor for you. And it's actually, when you were talking about control, we hadn't offered the mentorship program for a few years. And we started offering it again during COVID because we had several people asking about it. That it definitely, there is a demand for it, that we find there are people that just really want that connection. And I've never asked someone about being a mentor and had them say no. Everybody that I've sent them a request and been like, this is the person, do you think you'd be a good fit? They've all said that they'd be able to find time to do it. So
that's amazing. That's really great to hear.
Yeah.
Does anybody else have questions for Katie before we wrap up? It's about 10 to 1. Just want to make sure everybody's questions get answered today. And as we're just waiting for questions to come in, Katie, just curious, what do you think are the top like 1 or 2 or 3 skills that somebody who wants to become a professional agrologist should hold or work on developing?
From our perspective, it has a lot more to do with how you present yourself. The ability to know that this is outside of my scope of practice and therefore I can't comment on it, I'll send you an expert. Behaving professionally, and just how, like, because there's so many different sectors that we can't, like, someone could be really good at research and really horrible at public speaking, or someone could write excellent reports and absolutely hate another part. That as long as you're in the career that fits for you, it's just about making sure that you act professionally, you act ethical, and yeah, knowing when you can answer something, when you have to say, I'm going to research this and I'll get back to you, and knowing when you have to refer them to someone else. That it's how you act in the workplace is what I would say. I don't know if that's the answer you want, though.
No, that's a great answer. I was a little bit, thinking that I wanted to ask this question, but I wasn't quite sure how you would address it with the fact that there's so many different types of jobs in this field. On a related note, is there any particular places, websites, resources where one would go about finding a job in agrology specifically, or is it kind of all over the map because of the nature of the work?
I would honestly say that any of the websites that you're looking at for agricultural type jobs have these on them. That it's like, there's not a website. We don't have a website specifically for agrology. Some provinces do, but we were finding that like there's way more people that will post on LinkedIn or Ag Careers or through their company's website. Yeah, I can't really direct you to any one website or organization, but there's no secret one that you are missing out on.
That's all I needed to know. Thank you. And in the chat, I've just shared a couple that I tend to refer students to as well. There's more than that, depending on what specific area you might be looking for, but these are the two kind of popular ones out there, just for anybody who's not aware. Any last minute questions from anybody? Anybody still wondering or confused about anything? Anything else for Katie? Okay, I just wanted to thank Katie again for taking the time out of your day. I know I kind of sprung this on you at the last second and asked you to do this for us, but I think that in my role, I've taken on this role as career advisor focusing on OAC students in September 2019, and I have learned so much, but if any of you have been to my workshops, I always say I've learned a lot, but I have a lot to learn still. There's just so many possibilities, pathways, courses, credentials. So I always appreciate the opportunity to learn more and help students learn and understand more. So thank you for doing this for us. I have the presentation. Katie, are you okay if I share out the slides if anybody would like it down the road?
Oh yeah, that I'll have to get back to you on that.
Sure, no worries.
I'll review them again. I think they should be okay. We might have to remove one or two.
No problem. And I've taken some notes as well. So if anybody needs to reach out to me for any reason about the presentation, hopefully you have my email by now because I've sent the link, but I'm just putting my email in the chat again. If anybody needs anything, or if you didn't want to ask any questions outright here. And Katie's email is up there. So hopefully you can reach out to Katie if there's any specific questions about the OIA or the process that were mentioned here. So thank you everybody again. I'm going to stop recording now and I hope everybody has a wonderful afternoon. And Katie, I'm just going to ask you if you don't mind staying on for just 2 minutes so we can just regroup. That would be much appreciated. Otherwise, everybody have a great afternoon and best of luck with the rest of the semester. Thank you, everybody.